Before this video gets started, I want to apologize where the first few bits of it are a little bit on the darker side because I didn't realize that my camera was set on a certain setting, and I finally discovered that and switched it, so things will change as we get into the video. That's all. What's up, guys? Welcome back to another video on Pure Panorama. Let's dive right into it. You know, we got the HY35 turbo right on the tailgate right now, and I am soaking it down with some liquid wrench and some PB blaster to try and get these bolts out. I just pulled out a brand new wire brush. I've had this thing sitting in the garage for a while now, but we're gonna break her in on the HY35 turbo, and what I'm basically doing at this point is just trying to strip off what I can get off right now before it gets dark, so that we can try and get a better idea of what's going on with it, how far I'm gonna maybe have to go with a rebuild on it. Obviously, we will need to do all new journal bearings and all new insides on it, but I want to get an idea of what else I might need for it. New gaskets for the oil drain, definitely a given. New gasket for your exhaust elbow here, and also probably where the turbo mounts to the exhaust manifold. Definitely gotta use a new gasket on that stuff, but otherwise she really just looks a little crusty. I can't get over how much smaller this exhaust housing is on the HY35 compared to the HX35 turbo. I'll have to show you again in this video so you can see the difference, but this is so much smaller than the HX35. But I think right now what I'm seeing is we can pull out the oil drain. That will give me access to this big snap ring that holds the compressor housing cover on, and then we can get this V-band clamp off of here, which will allow it to break free, allow the bearing housing, the bearing assembly to break free from the exhaust housing. And then from that point, it's really just trying to get it all to separate. So once I'm able to get these 5 bolts out here and separate the exhaust elbow, and I have all this other stuff out of the way, the oil feed fitting here, and this V-band clamp is off, it's really just heating the hell out of this exhaust housing here and hitting it with a dead blow hammer until she pops loose and will separate. I do have to take off these little nuts here that hold the wastegate and pop this little E-clip off to get the wastegate actuator arm off from the actual wastegate lever there. So I'm gonna try and just get all that little stuff done and see how far we can get. Oh, and I also need to come up with some good snap ring pliers for the snap ring that holds this compressor cover on here. It is a large snap ring, and it's designed differently than the one on the HX35. So if you watch my HX35 rebuild video, you know I just took a pair of channel lock pliers because the snap ring that holds that compressor cover on has 2 little tabs that come up on it, so I could just grab them with channel locks, compress the snap ring, and then pop it off to get the compressor housing cover off. This one does not have that. It's literally just a giant snap ring. So what I did was went to Harbor Freight just to get some cheap, big 90-degree pliers here. And my thoughts are I will do what I did when I was setting the snap rings inside the bearing housing on the HX35. I'll just grind the tips down on these a little bit so they fit in this snap ring's holes, and then see if I can compress it enough with these to work it up out of there. The only problem is when I get it out, I don't know if I'm going to be able to open these up wide enough to let it go. So these might have to stay in there until I can put it back in there and put everything back together. But if I can make these work, then great. If not, then it looks like I hop on Amazon and I order in a big pair of snap ring pliers off of there. OTC has a pretty good looking set on there, so if I have to buy those, then I buy those. But I want to make sure that I'm trying to pull this snap ring off the safest way possible, because this thing is large, has a lot of tension on it, and the last thing I want is a snap ring dangling off my face somewhere. I'm past my piercing days. What in the hell was that, guys? I literally just pulled out the 3/4 inch socket to get on this oil feed right here, and I didn't even need a breaker bar or a ratchet to break it free. I just twisted it out with my fingers. What? I guess that thing wasn't really that tight. That's not good. So the good news is we got these 5 bolts here that hold the exhaust elbow to the exhaust housing all broken free, and I'm gonna tell you straight up right now that the threads on them are looking pretty rough. So as you can imagine, a lot of heat is traveling through this exhaust housing and these poor little bolts right here, which are a half inch socket. I forget what the thread pitch is, but I did buy new stainless ones. I'll have to see if I have one floating around in the bag behind me, but I did put new ones into the HX35 when I rebuilt that, so I'll figure out what that is and I'll let you guys know in an upcoming video or when we start getting further along with the HY35 to put it back together and stuff. But we do have them busted loose right now and they look really rough. If I had to guess, I'm gonna guess that this thing probably has never been pulled apart just looking at it and looking at the threads on these bolts. Who knows? I could be wrong. It could have been pulled apart at some point, but I'd have to guess probably not. A lot of liquid wrench, a lot of PB blaster. That's your friend. Oh, and if you have the old acetylene torch on deck, don't even waste your time. Pull that sucker out, hit it with some flame, and they'll bust right loose. Because you're definitely gonna need that torch to bust the exhaust housing off of the bearing housing. So it's not looking like these 90-degree pliers are gonna work all that well to get this snap ring off of the compressor housing. But I have this backup pair right here, which actually came with these in a 2-pack. I just figured these might work because they can get in there nice like this and I can work off to the side. But these ones appear to look like anyways get the job done a little bit better, and the reason these won't work is because I can't keep enough downforce on them to keep the tips in the holes of the snap ring when I'm trying to squeeze, because as you can imagine, like I already said, there's a lot of pressure on the snap ring, so you got to put a lot of pressure on it to bust it loose. Well, I've tried to give these ones a run and I was able to keep enough downward pressure on them while squeezing to try and bust this thing free. So once we get all this out of the way, we should be able to get this snap ring out with these here pliers. God dang, Harbor Freight special, baby. So I just took that paint pen right now and numbered each one of these bolts here so I know exactly what holes they came out of in case they do have to go back in there. I figured that the threads and stuff will match up obviously the best with the same bolt that came out of the hole, so I want to keep them numbered and ordered so I know exactly where they came from and where they should go back to. But I will most likely, just like I did with the HX35, replace those with some new stainless bolts. So I'm going to finish plucking these out of there, see if we can separate this exhaust elbow quick, and I guess see if we can't get that V-band moved down off of there and start heating up this bearing assembly and exhaust housing to see if we can't maybe separate it. And I also have to remove this little E-clip right there, circlip, so that I can pull the wastegate actuator arm off of the lever, and then everything will be able to separate. Actually, now that I have these bolts pulled out of that exhaust housing on the HY35, the threads don't really look all that bad. In fact, all of these bolts look a million times better than the bolts that I pulled out of the HX35's exhaust housing. They are in much better shape. The only questionable parts on these, and you'll see right here on this one as an example, is right up there by the head of the bolt. You can see a little bit of questionable area, but that is not part of the thread that actually holds the exhaust housing down, or the exhaust elbow down onto the exhaust housing. So these are just kind of resting up in there, if you will. These are the ones that are doing all the gripping and biting to clamp all that stuff down. So they're really not in that bad a shape, to be honest. Alright guys, I'm going to wrap up stuff with the HY35 for this video and call it quits right now. I got a lot of that stuff out of the way that I needed to get removed off of there so that we can start looking at trying to break that exhaust housing off of the bearing assembly there, the bearing housing, and really start to get into the guts of that turbo and get a rebuild going on it. So the only thing that I really have left to do until I can start heating that exhaust housing up and hitting it with a dead blow hammer is I just have to remove the wastegate actuator arm off of the wastegate lever there on the exhaust housing, and then we are in good shape to start whacking it with a 45-ounce dead blow and trying to get that thing to come apart so that we can gut it. So real quick before we end the video, I want to give you a little update on the EGT situation. This morning I come out, get in the truck, fire her up, and I'm getting ready to take off and head to work. All is good. Don't even look at the gauge, whatever. I get out on the road. I have to run over here to the mill shop and pick up a hemlock, rough cut hemlock board to bring into work. I pull in there and I literally look over at the gauge and it is pegged out at 1500 degrees. Just boink. Pegged right out. That ain't good. That's not right. So something was definitely going on with that. But then on lunch, I fire up the truck, I head out to lunch, and it was pegged out again for a little bit. And on the way back to the job site, I just glanced over at it and it had moved and dropped back down. It was riding around 800, 850-ish, somewhere in that range. Definitely still high, definitely something still going on with it. And I don't think now that it's anything to do with the truck. I do in fact think that it is a problem with the probe or the gauge, and I say this because when I ended up getting to work this morning, I shut the truck off and then I just turned the key to the on position, and usually when I do that, the gauges will go up, the needles move all the way up, and then they drop all the way back down, but the EGT gauge stay pegged out at 1500. So I have a feeling that it is in fact something to do with the gauge or the probe. Most likely the gauge, I would assume, if it's doing it when I turn the key to the on position, but it could be the probe, I don't know. Glow Shift actually did reach out to me on Instagram when I posted the picture on there earlier, so if you don't follow me there, go check out the last photo I posted at Pure Panorama 19 of the gauges, and I actually tagged them in it, and they gave me a couple little things to do to try and troubleshoot it and check on it. So we will look at that one of these nights or over the weekend and see what we can come up with, and see if we can't figure out which one of the two it is, or if it's just something completely different. I don't know, but that is going to do it, guys. I am going to clean up the mess on the tailgate of the truck, get everything put away. I'm pretty content with where we got tonight with the HY35. We got a lot of little stuff done and stripped off of it, so like I said, we are in good shape to start trying to break it open and get it gutted. So there should be an HY35 rebuild video coming soon. If you haven't seen the HX35 turbo rebuild videos already, make sure you go back and check them out from a few months back, and don't forget that all the tools and parts and things that I use here on the channel on the truck I have listed and linked up below in the video description. So if you're looking for anything or want to know where I got certain things, you can go right down in the descriptions, check out those links. It should take you right to the items and set you right up. Hey, don't forget to hit that thumbs up button on your way out. If you're stopping in for the first time, you're new here, hit that subscribe button, join the family, keep making it stronger, guys. We're on our way to 2K. We're not looking back. I will see you tomorrow with a brand new video. Hopefully we can keep going with the HY35, get some more done with that, and I will give you just a wee bit of an update on the old EGT gauge and keep you guys hopefully laughing at that situation. All right, peace.